Hi, folks. Welcome back. Though, if you live in California under one-party Democrat rule, welcome back probably feels more like welcome to the decline. Only in California can a mayor shed tears over a business daring to follow immigration law while the streets outside turn into open-air crime festivals. We've got illegal workers getting fired and our LA mayor, Karen Bash, acting like it's a tragedy of the century. And we've got hundreds of jobless thrill seekers shutting down downtown Los Angeles with fireworks, vandalism, and attempted looting, all met with the Democrat signature move, doing absolutely nothing. This is their blueprint for America, folks. Protect the lawbreakers, punish the taxpayers, and call it all progress.
A crowd of employees of the Los Angeles Equestrian Center huddled together Friday morning, moments before they were taken into a closed-door meeting, where they say they were all fired because of their immigration status. We're told they took care of horses and stables.
How does it feel? I mean, you just heard all these people got let go.
It's terrible. You know, there's a lot of people whose life has been upended. You know, if we got fired, just everyone can put themselves in that kind of a position, I'm sure.
Susan Becker boards her horse here.
She's also upset
she's learning more through the grapevine than directly from management.
I'm very disappointed in the management because, like I said, I mean, if they're going to make a decision like that, everybody needs to be informed.
Maybe you should hire Americans.
How about north of Griffith Park. The city contracts private company ASM Global to run the facility. Mayor Bass speaking with our Alex Michelson in studio about the matter this afternoon.
Apparently, I guess ICE asked for whether or not the employees had proper identification and through E-Verify. And that's all I know right now. But what's important to me, though, is ICE changing their tactics? Are they changing their tactics?
Just last week, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed a federal judge's temporary restraining order preventing ICE from stopping and questioning people about their immigration status without reasonable suspicion or a warrant. It does not appear that today's events at the Equestrian Center violate that order. Still,
I'm devastated. You know, this is a terrible situation for all these people who, a lot of these people, they've been working a long time and they've been working really hard.
Hire Americans. It's actually crazy how Democrats have openly and proudly embraced America last. Why can't these jobs go to Americans? I'm sure there are at least a handful of people who would love to pay their bills instead of watching these opportunities go to people paid under the table at below market wages. This story is a perfect snapshot of the Democrat moral inversion. The mayor of Los Angeles is more concerned with whether ICE is changing their tactics than the fact that a taxpayer-funded facility was employing people here illegally, likely for years, while local unemployment and cost of living skyrocket. This isn't compassion, by the way. It's a rigged labor system that rewards law-breaking and undercuts legal American workers, all while turning the enforcement of existing laws into some kind of moral scandal. Democrats have built a political machine that depends on erasing the line between citizen and non-citizen, not because it helps our country, but because it maintains them in power through dependency, activism, and identity politics. The outrage here isn't that ICE did its job. It's that our elected leaders have decided their job is to make sure American law never gets in the way of their political agenda and expanding their power. Now, for additional context, illegal aliens make up roughly 4.8% of the U.S. workforce, according to the Center for Immigration Studies, and their presence is most concentrated in low-wage, labor-intensive jobs. When millions of additional workers are added into the same pool as America's least educated citizens, the result is predictable. More competition for the same jobs and downward pressure on pay. In California, where illegal aliens account for 8% of the workforce, or roughly 1.5 million people, that pressure is magnified, hitting industries like agriculture especially hard. Nearly 46% of California's farm workers are illegal aliens, which allows employers to hold wages down year after year, eroding the bargaining power of legal American workers who can't afford to work for less. Harvard economist George Borjas has shown how this dynamic works. By paying illegal labor roughly 40% less than comparable legal or native workers, and still 4% less after adjusting for demographics, employers lower the prevailing wage for everyone in the same sector. That drop in labor value is most devastating for low-skilled American workers, particularly black high school dropouts in industries like meatpacking and construction, where the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights estimates the labor supply has been inflated by as much as 25%. Economic Policy Institute notes that this isn't just a wage problem. It's also a standards problem, as the influx of easily exploited workers allows employers to weaken workplace protections. And as Stephen Camarota testified before the House Oversight Committee, these wage and job losses spill into higher housing costs, lower affordability, and greater fiscal strain in high immigrant states. It's a chain reaction. Expand the labor pool with millions of illegal workers, drive down pay, push legal workers out, and watch the cost of living climb, leaving the working class worse off at every single step. But Democrats aren't just focused on creating policies that punish the working class. They're also enthralled with making life in California a living hell.
Breaking overnight, traffic stopped in downtown during a street takeover in front of Crypto.com Arena. As you can see, dozens of people crowded all around, including some standing on top of a balcony. All this as the cars dangerously drifted in the street. People in the crowds also setting off fireworks. There were reports, we're working to verify, of a broken window and attempted looting at a store at Crypto.com Arena in that area. Eventually, police arrived to disperse the crowd. Some paint was left on nearby cars.
It's actually insane that these news reports would minimize the effects that these kinds of meetups have. They're not just good old family fun with some slight property damage. They're a public declaration that lawlessness now operates without consequence in America's second largest city. What we are seeing outside the crypto arena isn't just a harmless gathering. It's a show of force by people who know the system won't touch them. After several hours of fireworks, vandalism, and an attempted looting, folks, the LAPD finally arrived and made zero arrests, confirming what's been obvious for years. Under Democrat leadership, public safety is optional. Enforcement is purely political, and order is something reserved for special occasions. This is the end result of a cultural shift driven by the Democrat obsession with restorative justice and decriminalization, where breaking the law is reframed as an act of self-expression and police are treated like an occupying army. When the political class turns criminality into a protected identity and paints enforcement as oppression, they don't just embolden the mob, folks. They normalize it. And once chaos becomes a civic tradition, the line between a functioning city and an ungovernable one disappears. And to be absolutely clear, folks, this kind of negligence from public officials isn't accidental, it's calculated. The refusal to enforce the law in situations like the crypto arena takeover, it's not incompetence. It's part of a broader ideological strategy rooted in the Marxist playbook. When you strip away the slogans, the clear goal is to erode public trust in existing institutions by allowing chaos to flourish. Then present government, under their terms, it becomes the only solution. Disorder on the streets creates a population that's fearful, divided, and easier to control. The Democrats have learned that if you selectively enforce laws, protect certain offenders, and punish political opposition, you can destabilize society while advancing the narrative that the system is broken and must be rebuilt in their image. This isn't random mismanagement by people like Karen Bass. It's deliberate political engineering where public safety is sacrificed to reshape power structures and redefine the relationship between citizens and the state. And folks, this chaos goes all the way up the chain because we've got Governor Gavin Newsom throwing his hair gel supported support behind gerrymandering.
So when you look at the big ugly bill that has passed by one vote, you know how important the voices of that community are. Yeah. And so yes, it is shameful that being at 60 years of the Civil Rights Act, signed by President Johnson from Texas, that we now face discrimination by Governor Abbott, bending the knee to Trump and wanting to steal 5 seats before the next election cycle. And so that's what we know is on the line, not just for Texas. This sweeps across the nation.
And that's the point now a number of you have made. This is not, again, just about Texas. Yes. And we're already reading about, we saw yesterday J.D. Vance himself, the Vice President of the United States, made his way to Indiana to try to convince the folks there to do the same. We've already heard the Speaker of the House and the Governor of Florida talk about their efforts or their desire to do their efforts. We know Ohio is already moving in this direction, Missouri, other states that likely will follow suit. So to your point, this is about rigging the election before a vote is cast before 2026.
You've done the same thing, dude. Greasy Gavin complaining about gerrymandering like California isn't one of the most gerrymandered states in the country is icing on a cake baked with pure delusion. This is the same governor who presides over a state where Democrats have drawn congressional maps so precisely engineered that one-party dominance is all but guaranteed. Yet he frames Republican-led redistricting in other states as an existential threat to democracy. By the way, we're a constitutional republic, not a democracy. What Gavin and his spineless allies are really objecting to isn't rigging the process. It's losing the monopoly they've enjoyed for decades through ballot harvesting, activist-drawn districts, and the weaponization of election laws to favor the Democrat base. This is a classic case of projection, folks. Accuse your opponents of doing exactly what you've mastered, but wrap it in the moral language of civil rights and voter protection, so the media will just nod along and help you support this narrative. And here's a deeper game, folks. By painting any Republican redistricting as illegitimate before the first ballot is cast, Democrats are laying the groundwork to delegitimize any GOP wins in 2026 while rallying their base around the fantasy that only Democrats can be trusted with redistricting. Now, in case you're still wondering, folks, California is one of the most egregiously redistricted states in America, despite the myth that its independent redistricting commission creates fair maps. In reality, the process is stacked from start to finish, with commissioners being selected through a politically influenced vetting system, interest groups flooding hearings with coordinated testimony, and lines being redrawn in ways that pack Republican voters into as few districts as possible while cracking competitive areas to guarantee Democrat dominance. And the results speak for themselves, folks. In a state where Republicans routinely receive around 35 to 40% of the vote in statewide races, they hold barely 20% of congressional seats. Many districts snake through counties and carve up communities with surgical precision, ensuring safe blue seats for decades. It's gerrymandering in everything but name, done with a smile, wrapped in nonpartisan branding, and defended by the same leaders who screech about election rigging anywhere a Republican holds a pen.
Hey, President Trump, it's time to stand down. It's time to make another phone call to Greg Abbott. This time, instead of calling him and telling him you're quote unquote entitled to 5 congressional seats, it's time to tell him to stand down. It's time to recognize that democracy is at risk. It's time to, dare I say, do the right thing. Actually see how that feels for you, doing the right thing. If you don't, California will neutralize anything you do in the state of Texas. California will continue to punch above its weight. We believe in democracy. We believe in the enduring values.
How can you say you believe in democracy after saying that?
49 years. We're not going to sit back passively. We're not going to sit back and watch you light democracy on fire. We will fight fire with fire.
And speaking of fires, Gavin, when are you planning on putting the phone down and actually addressing the Canyon fire? By the way, folks, this might be the most disingenuous monologue you'll hear from any politician this year, dripping with historical revisionism and irony so thick you could pave a highway with it. Gavin invokes the Founding Fathers while preaching about defending democracy, conveniently ignoring that the Founding Fathers built a constitutional republic precisely because they feared democracy's tendency toward mob rule. And while accusing Trump of eroding democracy, Gavin openly brags about neutralizing election outcomes in other states, essentially promising to manipulate the system as long as it benefits Democrats. This is the Democrat playbook playing out in real time. Redefine democracy as when we win, recast checks and balances as threat, and turn raw political power into a moral crusade. The real danger, folks, isn't Trump lighting democracy on fire. It's politicians like Newsom convincing half the country and the Democrat base that burning it down is noble as long as Democrats are holding the match. So the question isn't even whether you believe Gavin Newsom or Donald Trump. It's whether you're willing to accept a political culture where truth is optional, power is the only principle, and words like democracy are bent to mean whatever serves the moment for Democrats. How much of what you're told is actually about preserving your rights, and how much is about preserving the Democrat grip on power? At what point do you stop letting headlines think for you and start judging leaders by the consistency of their actions, not the poetry of their speeches. Because if we don't challenge the stories Democrats are feeding us, especially when they come wrapped in, that moral certainty they love to exude, we're not citizens in a republic anymore. We're spectators in a show that was rigged before the curtain ever even went up. Anyway, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.